In 1953, Francis Bacon completed a portrait of Pope Innocent X. The Pope had been dead for 3 centuries. Bacon had never seen the original painting he was reinterpreting. He traveled to Rome but refused to enter the gallery where it hung. The painting shows a figure in purple robes, mouth torn open, trapped behind yellow lines that resemble a cage or an execution device. The face blurs into streaks, the hands grip the armrests, the eyes stare forward through fragile glasses, and the mouth gapes open. A black void where the face should hold composure. In traditional portraiture, subjects keep their lips closed. Showing teeth outside of a smile was considered grotesque. Here, the mouth becomes the painting's center. It produces no sound, but the viewer feels the silence as pressure, as if waiting for a scream that will never arrive. The painting Bacon obsessed over was made in 1650 by Diego Velázquez. It is known as the greatest portrait ever painted. It depicts Pope Innocent X, Giovanni Battista Pamphili, as a man of absolute authority. He sits in crimson robes, the color of power and martyrdom. His gaze is steady, revealing shrewdness and control. One hand holds a folded paper, suggesting intellect. The other rests on the throne's armrest. Innocent X was politically ruthless. Velázquez captured terrifying competence. The Pope radiates not warmth, but certainty. He is God's representative on earth. The red dominates. Crimson for the church, but also for blood. Bacon first encountered the Velázquez portrait through a book. He became fixated. For decades, he returned to the image, painting over 40 variations of screaming popes. But he never looked at the original in person. In 1953, he went to Rome. The Galleria Doria Pamphilj was accessible. He walked past it, later admitting the avoidance was deliberate. He worked only from reproductions, black and white photographs, degraded book illustrations, and memory. His life provides context. His father was a tyrannical disciplinarian. As a gay man, when homosexuality was illegal, Bacon lived under constant surveillance and enforced secrecy. His romantic relationships were turbulent, often violent. He painted after World War II, when Europe had watched father figures, Hitler, Mussolini, Stalin, turn monstrous. His studio was a space of obsessive repetition. He worked from corrupted sources because corruption was the method. He wanted the myth, not the object. He once said, "We are potential carcasses. Beneath every costume, every title, every claim to power, there is only mortal flesh." Look at the yellow lines around the throne. In Velázquez's painting, the chair is upholstered, solid, unmistakably a seat of status. In Bacon's version, the throne is outlined in harsh, geometric yellow. Art historians debate what this cage represents. Some see an electric chair, others see a glass booth, like those used in war crime trials. Some interpret it as a clinical diagram, a schematic for observation or dissection. The interpretations converge. The Pope is not sitting. He is contained. The seat of power has become a device of imprisonment. The figure cannot move, pinned to this moment, frozen in a spasm while the image appears to vibrate. Trace the yellow. Notice how it boxes him in on all sides. Examine the robes. Velázquez used crimson, rich, shimmering, alive. The red in the original has texture. Light catches the fabric's folds. Bacon uses purple. Not royal purple, but a bruised, violent shade that reads as rotting meat. The color sits flat and heavy on the canvas. The paint is applied in vertical strokes, dragged downward. Art critics call this technique striating or shuddering. Bacon would load his brush and pull it down in long, unbroken movements. The result creates the effect of viewing the image through rain, or as if the figure is vibrating at high frequency. The robes no longer protect or elevate. They become part of the disintegration. Look at the hands gripping the yellow armrests. They are blurred, almost claw-like. The knuckles press into the armrests. The grip is not casual or controlled. These hands are holding on. The energy flows from the screaming mouth down through the torso to the knuckles. The body forms a closed circuit. The scream generates tension. The tension travels through the shoulders, down the arms, into the hands. Without that grip, the figure might shake apart entirely. The glasses remain. In Velázquez's portrait, the Pope holds a paper, a symbol of intellect. In Bacon's version, the pince-nez glasses frame the eyes, fragile and nearly broken. They sit crooked on the bridge of the nose. The mind observes its own collapse but cannot stop it. Bacon stated he wanted to paint the scream more than the horror. This distinction matters. Horror is the external cause. The scream is the body's response. Involuntary, physiological, beyond conscious control. This is about making invisible pressure visible. The body betrays what the mind cannot articulate. Bacon kept a photograph in his studio. It was a still from Sergei Eisenstein's 1925 silent film Battleship Potemkin. The image shows a nurse, her glasses shattered, her mouth open in agony. She has just been shot in the eye during a massacre on the Odessa steppes. The Odessa steppes sequence is one of the most famous scenes in cinema history. Soldiers march down stone steps, firing into a crowd of civilians. A mother carries her dead child, a baby carriage tumbles down the stairs, and the nurse, caught in the gunfire, her face frozen in the moment before death. Her glasses splinter, her mouth opens. The scream is silent because the film has no sound, but the face communicates absolute horror. Bacon kept this image pinned to his studio wall for years. He returned to it repeatedly, the way he returned to the Velázquez Pope. The nurse became part of his visual vocabulary. Look at the nurse. Now look at the Pope's mouth. The shape is identical. The jaw drops at the same angle. The teeth are visible in the same way. The darkness of the throat is rendered with the same depth. Bacon transplanted the scream of a victim onto the face of the most powerful man in the world. The glasses are the link. In Eisenstein's still, the nurse's spectacles are broken by violence. Shards of glass pierce her face. In Bacon's painting, the Pope wears pince-nez that appear fragile, on the verge of shattering. They sit precariously. They suggest that at any moment they could break, and the intellect they represent, the ability to see clearly, to judge, to understand, would be destroyed. Bacon confirmed his use of the Eisenstein image in interviews. He spoke openly about grafting elements from one source onto another. He was not hiding the theft, he was making a deliberate statement. He grafted the DNA of victimhood onto authority. The screaming nurse's expression now inhabits the Pope. The wounded and the powerful collapse into a single figure. The distinction between oppressor and oppressed dissolves. The force crushing the powerless is the same force crushing the powerful. The yellow cage does not distinguish. The pressure is universal. Authority does not grant immunity. The only difference is that power pretends otherwise, maintains the performance of control until the body can no longer sustain the illusion. The year matters. World War II had ended 8 years earlier. The Holocaust had revealed industrial-scale death. The atomic bomb had introduced the possibility of total annihilation. Europe had watched leaders claim divine mandate, then commit atrocities. The war changed how people viewed authority. Before 1939, the father figure, whether a national leader or a religious authority, was assumed to be a source of stability and moral guidance. By 1945, that assumption had collapsed. The men who had demanded obedience, who had claimed to speak for God or nation or history, had led millions into mechanized slaughter. The camps, the bombings, the body counts, these were not the work of madmen operating in secret. They were state policies, executed by bureaucrats, blessed by institutions. Existentialist philosophy was rising in popular consciousness. Nietzsche's declaration that God is dead was no longer academic. It described the cultural landscape. Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus were writing about the absurdity of existence, the absence of inherent meaning, the isolation of the individual in a universe without divine order. Religious authority no longer comforted. It became suspect, exposed as human construct. Bacon painted in this atmosphere. The Pope in his painting is not sitting in a palace or a church. Look at the background. Velázquez painted a room, a palace interior with visible architectural details. Bacon paints a void. Heavy, vertical black streaks eliminate all context. This removes time and place. The Pope is not depicted in 1650 or 1953. He exists in a timeless hell, isolated in perpetual suffering. The black void suggests this is not happening in physical space. It is happening in psychological space, the interior landscape where pressure becomes unbearable. Philosopher Gilles Deleuze wrote that Bacon painted forces, not things. The scream is not about a face. It is about the force of pressure making itself visible through the body's involuntary reaction. The yellow cage is not a literal object. It is the weight of consciousness, the inescapable awareness of mortality, the isolation that no title or robe can dispel. When this painting was first exhibited in the 1950s, it met with scandal. The art world was divided. Abstract expressionism celebrated pure painting, Jackson Pollock's drips, Mark Rothko's color fields. Artists were moving away from representation entirely. Paint was becoming about paint, not about depicting recognizable subjects. Bacon was seen as retrograde for painting recognizable figures. He was working in a mode that many considered outdated. But the way he painted those figures disturbed viewers. Critics called the work grotesque. The distortion, the violence of the brushwork, the screaming mouth, these elements created unease. Conservative audiences saw blasphemy. The Pope depicted as a demon or a madman violated every convention of religious portraiture. Religious art is meant to inspire devotion, to present the divine as both approachable and transcendent. Bacon's Pope inspired nothing but discomfort. Margaret Thatcher, years later, described Bacon as that man who paints those dreadful pictures. The comment was dismissive, but it reflected a widespread discomfort with his work. The Vatican issued no official ban, but the work stood in direct opposition to everything religious portraiture was meant to accomplish. Religious art elevates. It offers consolation. It reminds the viewer of divine order. Bacon did the opposite. He dragged divinity into the physical realm and revealed it as meat. He showed authority not as something granted by God, but as a performance that can crack under pressure. The robes are just fabric. The throne is just wood. The Pope is just a body, subject to the same forces that crush everyone else. The painting's influence spread through visual culture over the following decades. The blurred face, the open mouth, the sense of trapped motion. These became templates for depicting psychological collapse in modern horror. The designs in video games like Silent Hill use the same visual grammar. The distorted, screaming figures in those games trace their lineage directly back to Bacon. The visual language of films like Jacob's Ladder, with its vibrating, unstable images of bodies in torment, draws from the same source. Even the Joker's appearance in The Dark Knight, the smeared makeup, the exaggerated mouth, echoes Bacon's techniques. There is irony in the painting's modern legacy. Works by Francis Bacon now sell for tens of millions of dollars. In 2013, his triptych 3 Studies of Lucian Freud sold for over $142 million, setting a record at the time. This image of rotting authority has become one of the most expensive artworks in the world. The painting that strips power of its costume is now owned by power. Collectors who occupy positions of authority purchase images that diagnose the hollowness of authority. The contradiction is complete. Return to the eyes. They stare forward through fragile glasses that catch light, but reveal nothing behind them. The mouth is open. The hands grip the armrests. The yellow cage contains him. The black void strips away all context. The body dissolves under invisible pressure. Bacon didn't paint for shock. He painted a diagnosis. What happens when the performance of authority fails, when the costume can no longer hide the body, when pressure overwhelms composure? Authority is not protection. The throne becomes a trap, the title a cage. The force that crushes the powerless crushes everyone. Power simply denies this until the body exposes the truth. The scream marks the moment when involuntary reaction surpasses discipline and dignity. The Pope is not reacting to an external threat. There is none. He screams because he cannot exit his own mind, cannot stop being the Pope, cannot escape the weight of consciousness, mortality, and the isolation of authority. The robes dissolve into streaks. The throne becomes a diagram of containment. The performance has collapsed. Beneath everything, he is just mortal, just alone, and the silent scream never ends. This was Bacon's diagnosis in 1953. Authority offers no shelter from existence. The pressure is universal. The cage is consciousness itself. The yellow lines around the Pope confine all of us. The scream is universal. Only the timing of the body's betrayal differs.